I made the mistake of digging into the deep web once. It started innocently enough. I was scrolling through Reddit, just killing time, when I stumbled across a thread. People were talking about something called Tor, a browser that lets you access the darker corners of the internet. It was one of those, "what's the creepiest thing you found on the deep web?" kind of posts. The comments were a mix of bizarre and terrifying. I don't know why I kept reading, but something about the unknown reeled me in. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I downloaded Tor. Someone in the thread had dropped a link, a kind of hidden wiki, basically a directory full of links into the dark web. When I clicked through, it was like stepping into a twisted reflection of the internet. At first glance, it seemed like just a mess of outdated formatting and cryptic labels, but then I started seeing what was really there. I was instantly overwhelmed and disgusted by the sheer number of links tied to child pornography. They were everywhere. I didn't dare click anything like that, of course, and I did my best to stay far, far away. Just seeing the titles made my skin crawl. Still, I kept browsing, almost in a trance. At one point, I came across another link that led to a different directory. This one was called The Black Pages. It loaded into a jet black screen with scattered links, all written in red and yellow text. It looked like something out of an old hacker movie, but worse. Off. The red links caught my eye. They had this sinister weight to them. One was labeled Personal Assassin, another Dead Pets. The names alone made my stomach knot. I hovered over them for a moment, hesitating. A strange, hollow feeling had crept into my chest by then. Reading through even just a few of these link titles made it painfully clear just how deranged some corners of the deep web really were. It wasn't thrilling, it was sickening. But still, I clicked. I avoided the red links and picked a yellow one instead. It led to yet another page, filled top to bottom with more cryptic listings. That's when something new caught my eye. Something labeled The Secret Society Chat. No context, no description, just that eerie, loaded name. I paused, staring at it. Something about it was magnetic, like it was calling me. So, against my better judgment, I clicked. It took forever to load, longer than any other page I'd visited that night. The screen stayed completely blank, just a dull white void, for what must have been a full minute. I was about to give up, maybe even close the browser and call it a night, when the screen suddenly shifted. Black, pitch black. And then a chat box appeared in the center of the screen, glowing faintly. Next to it, a small black rectangle that looked like a disabled video feed. I stared at it, waiting. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. I should have clicked back. I should have. But instead, I typed, "Hey." What happened next was wrong. Deeply, undeniably wrong. The black video screen suddenly flickered, and then it came to life. Someone was sitting there, motionless, in a pitch-black room, barely lit by a flickering bulb or screen just out of frame. They were wearing a mask. I couldn't make out any features, just the hollow white of the mask, smooth and expressionless, almost porcelain. Something about the way they stared into the camera, like they were staring through it, froze the blood in my veins. And then, without warning, my own face appeared on the screen. I stopped breathing. It was my webcam feed. Somehow, the site had turned on my camera, even though I always keep it disabled. I hadn't granted any permissions. I hadn't clicked anything. But there I was, my own reflection, pale and wide-eyed, staring back at me. Panicking, I slammed my thumb over the camera lens and tried to exit the window. But something was wrong. My taskbar was gone. The minimize and close buttons completely vanished. The Tor browser had hijacked my screen. It was like I wasn't in control anymore. I hit Control, Alt, Delete. Nothing. No task manager, no response. Just the silent stare of the masked figure and the flickering glow of my own webcam feed. Then, suddenly, a voice. It bled through my speakers like static from a broken radio. Muffled, distorted, warbled through a voice changer that twisted it into something inhuman. But even with the layers of interference, I could make out what it said. I still see you, James. My heart sank like a stone. My mouth went dry. My name. He had said my name. I don't remember thinking. I just reacted. I grabbed the side of my laptop and held down the power button. I kept pressing, desperate for the screen to go black. Seconds stretched like minutes. I could still hear that voice lingering in the air, like it was clinging to the walls of my room. Finally, the screen went dark. The machine whirred to a stop. Silence. I sat in the dim glow of my desk lamp, staring at the dead laptop, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I had no idea what just happened, whether it was a hacker, some kind of twisted troll, or something worse. I thought about going to the police, but what could I even show them? With Tor, everything was designed to be anonymous, untraceable, invisible. It felt hopeless. So I deleted the Tor browser, scrubbed everything, tried to put it behind me. And for a while, life moved on. But then, about 2 weeks later, my mom knocked on my door, walked in, and casually tossed an envelope onto my bed. "Hey, this came in the mail for you," she said. "No return address." She didn't think anything of it, but the moment I saw it, a chill slid down my spine. The envelope was plain, unmarked, no stamp, no sender. Just my name, handwritten across the front. My hands were trembling as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly folded. I unfolded it, and in huge, jagged letters that filled the entire page were 3 words scrawled in dark ink. "Don't come back." My stomach turned. I felt nauseous, like something rotten had just dropped into the pit of my gut. I sat there for a long time, just staring at those words, heart pounding, ears ringing, the fear crawling down my arms like ice. I crumpled the letter and shoved it deep into the trash. I didn't tell the cops. What would I say? That a nameless, faceless stranger from the dark web sent me a cryptic threat through the mail? It felt like a dead end. And I didn't tell my mom either. She'd panic, and I didn't want to see that look in her eyes. The fear, the helplessness. But what haunts me most is the question that's never left me since. How did they get my name? How did they get my address? My worst experience on tour wasn't just disturbing, it was soul-scarring. I was deep into the browser one night, half lost in a haze of grim curiosity, when I stumbled across a site that still makes me feel sick just thinking about it. I don't remember the exact path I took to find it. Probably some obscure archive buried under layers of bizarre links. But I'll never forget what it was called. Human Experiments. Even the name made my stomach turn. But I clicked. God help me, I clicked. The homepage loaded slowly, each second dragging like a warning I didn't listen to. And when it finally appeared, I just stared, paralyzed. The text was written in a smeared, deep red font that looked like it had been splashed onto the screen rather than typed. It wasn't just disturbing, it was hostile, like the site itself didn't want to be seen by the wrong kind of people, or maybe the right kind. The introduction explained what the site was. A documentation archive of human experimentation. Real experiments, real people. The next lines destroyed me. It claimed that the purpose of the site and these experiments was to prove that not all humans are born equal. That some lives were, in their words, more disposable than others. The victims? Primarily the homeless, the nameless, the people no one would go looking for. But not just them. There were also unfortunate souls, as they put it, who had simply made the mistake of getting caught. Caught by whoever these people were. The experiments they listed weren't the kind found in medical journals. These were twisted, barbaric tests that sounded like something ripped from the darkest era of human history. The site detailed them casually, as if they were nothing more than data points in a science fair project. Starvation and water deprivation, reactions to extreme physical pain, exposure to untreated infections and deliberate injection of diseases, and even more horrific, trials on infants, tolerance to radiation, extreme temperatures, and relentless physical stress. I had seen shock videos before. I thought I had built up some resistance over the years. 3 guys, 1 hammer, and all that other viral horror. But nothing could have prepared me for this. I made the mistake of clicking on the first experiment photo archive. The images loaded slowly, one by one, like something dragging itself out of a grave. And when I saw the first picture, my body froze. I couldn't even breathe. My stomach twisted violently, and I had to fight the overwhelming urge to throw up right there in my chair. I won't describe what I saw. I can't. But I will say this. The people in those photos, they weren't actors. They weren't medical patients. They were ordinary human beings, just like you, just like me, subjected to horrors no living creature should ever endure. Something inside me screamed to click away, but I didn't. I scrolled. God help me, I kept scrolling. Each image was worse than the last, a grotesque procession of suffering captured without empathy or remorse. And then I hit a new section. Infants, toddlers. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe anyone could even conceive of this. Their tiny, helpless bodies, their eyes. I think I disassociated. I think a part of my mind shut down just to protect itself. Because somehow I made it all the way to the bottom of the page. And that's when something new happened. A small box blinked into existence on my screen. I stared at it, dazed. My mind struggled to process what it was. Then, text. One slow, deliberate line crawling across the box. The line of text that crept across the small box on my screen read, "Did you enjoy the sight?" I stared at it, stunned for a moment. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. It wasn't just a pop-up, it was a chat box. A real-time conversation. I hesitated, then typed back, "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately, like the stranger on the other end had been waiting for me. "What was your favorite part of the site?" My blood turned cold. He had completely ignored my question. The way he asked that, so casual, so offhand, was nauseating. Like he was chatting about a favorite movie instead of a collection of unspeakable horrors. I didn't answer that. I typed the same question again. "Who are you?" This time he replied differently. "I'm the owner." Just those 3 words. I stared at them for a few seconds before I replied again, this time with shaking hands and a tight jaw. "This is sick, inhumane. I'm reporting this site immediately." I hit enter. That was the worst mistake I could have made. For several seconds, there was nothing. The cursor blinked in the empty chat box. Then, finally, another message appeared. I see your name is Michael, and you live in Massachusetts." My heart stopped. He was right. I sat there in stunned silence, feeling all the air vanish from my lungs. My fingers hovered uselessly over the keyboard, suddenly unsure of what to do. And yet, instead of clicking away, instead of shutting everything down right then and there, I typed back, "No, you're wrong." It was a weak bluff, and I knew it. Desperate, useless. The reply didn't come instantly this time. There was a pause, long enough to feel like the calm before a storm. Then the next message appeared. It wasn't a name. It wasn't a state. It was my address. My full, correct home address. I felt something in my chest shrivel up. My skin turned to ice. Every instinct in my body screamed to move, to run, to destroy the laptop and never look back. And then one final message slid across the screen. Have a nice day. That was it. I snapped. I slammed the browser shut, then the entire laptop. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely grip the phone, but I called the police immediately, before even telling my parents what had just happened. When the officers arrived at our house, I told them everything. I couldn't hold anything back. My parents stood in the room, listening, their expressions slowly changing from confusion to horror. The police asked to examine my laptop, and I handed it over. But there was a problem. I didn't remember the link. I hadn't written it down. I hadn't bookmarked it. And the Tor browser doesn't save browsing history. Nothing. It was gone, like the site had never existed at all. The officers were grim but understanding. They didn't accuse me of making it up. They didn't laugh. They told us, calmly but seriously, that if what I said was true, we should consider finding somewhere else to stay. Immediately. Thank God we had already been thinking of moving. That gave us a reason, an excuse, to act fast without raising eyebrows in the neighborhood. Still, I was shocked by how quickly my parents responded. Within what felt like days, the house was sold, boxes were packed, a new place was found. But that didn't stop the guilt from eating at me. For an entire month, I apologized to my parents every single day. I hated what I dragged them into, hated that something I had done, something stupid, had forced them to go through all this. And still, I wonder, was he bluffing? Was it some twisted hacker with good tools and scare tactics? Or was he really watching me? I'll never know. But what I do know is this: no one, and I mean no one, should ever go looking into the deep web, because there's nothing down there worth finding, only things you'll never be able to unsee, only things you'll never be able to escape. There used to be this infamous site on the dark web, the Silk Road. If you've heard of it, you know what it was. If you haven't, well, it was an underground marketplace where you could buy just about any illegal drug imaginable. I first heard about it from some friends, people who had actually used it. They said it was legit, encrypted, anonymous. The kind of place where anything went as long as you paid in Bitcoin. At the time, our usual weed dealer was packing up and moving out of state. He was basically our only connection, and when he left, it felt like we were completely cut off. So, when my friend told me he was using this new site to buy instead, and that it actually worked, I got curious. It was perfect timing too. My parents had gone out of town for the weekend, off to Atlantic City. I had the house to myself. No supervision, no questions. The idea of scoring some weed while they were gone seemed too good to pass up. So I downloaded the Tor browser and dove in. The Silk Road was surreal, almost like a twisted version of Amazon for illegal substances. The biggest category, of course, was cannabis. Page after page of different strains, prices, and vendors, all with user reviews and ratings. I browsed until I found a newer listing that looked tempting, an ounce for way cheaper than I'd seen anywhere else. But since it was a new vendor, there weren't many reviews yet. So I did what anyone cautious would do. I left a comment asking if anyone had bought from this person and whether it was legit. I closed the tab and walked away for a bit, figuring I'd come back and check later. About an hour later, I logged back in. And there it was, a message waiting for me. It was from a user named IllyB. He told me he'd seen my comment and said he could hook me up himself. An ounce, cheap, dirt cheap, way below what I was expecting to pay. But there was a catch. He only did local deals, no shipping. Normally, that would have set off alarms, but I'd done local deals before. In-person stuff wasn't new to me, and I'd never had a problem with it before. So I asked him where he was based. Turned out, he lived only about an hour away from me. I offered to meet him halfway, somewhere public, somewhere in between. But surprisingly, he replied, "Nah, I'll just meet you in your hometown, easier for you." I hesitated just for a second. But the price, the convenience, it all sounded too good to refuse. So I said yes. He told me he'd be over after work, around 9 p.m. I told him we could meet in the Wendy's parking lot near my place. It was public, well lit, and open late. It felt like the safest option for something like this. But then he started asking strange questions. Stuff that made my gut tighten. He asked for my address and who I lived with. I wasn't about to give a random dealer from the dark web my home address. That was a hard no. So I lied. I told him I lived alone. Figured that would make me less of a target somehow. He didn't push back, at least not right away. A little while later, he messaged me again. Said he'd found a better spot to do the deal. Not just different, better, according to him. It was behind an old, closed-down retail store on the edge of town. One of those places that had gone out of business years ago and never got repurposed. The kind of spot people only ever drove past, never into. My sketch alarm was blaring in the back of my head. Everything about this felt off. But I was desperate. I hadn't smoked in weeks, and this guy was offering an ounce for next to nothing. It was like a drug deal gift-wrapped in convenience. And besides, I knew that building. I'd passed it 100 times. So I drove out there. It only took about 5 minutes. The roads were mostly empty by then, quiet and cold. I pulled into the cracked, weed-choked lot behind the building, headlights sweeping across the back wall. It was as dead and forgotten as I remembered. Rusted doors, boarded windows, and shadows thick enough to swallow a person whole. But I didn't see anyone. No cars, no movement, no signs of Illy B. Then I got a text. On my way. That stopped me cold. On his way? That didn't make sense. If he lived an hour away, like he said, how would he know this place? Why would he suggest it so confidently, like he knew it better than I did? I sat there with the engine running, phone clutched in my hand, waiting for another message. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. I kept texting him, asking where he was, if he was close, if this was still happening. Nothing. The screen stayed silent. A pit started forming in my stomach. Something wasn't right. I could feel it. It wasn't just sketchy anymore. It was wrong. Like I was being watched. Like I wasn't the only person parked out there in the dark. I sat up straighter in my seat and scanned the shadows again. Still nothing. And that was when I made the decision, the only one that felt sane. I gave up. Whatever this was, however badly I wanted that weed, it wasn't worth it. Something in my gut told me I needed to leave now, while I still could. So I put the car in drive and pulled out of that forgotten lot, feeling like I had narrowly dodged something I couldn't quite name. It took me about 10 minutes to get home. When I pulled into the driveway, I felt something was off immediately. The front door was open. I knew I had shut it before I left. I double-checked. I always do. A chill crawled up my spine. For a second, I panicked. Maybe my parents had gotten home early? But then I noticed something else. My dad's car wasn't in the driveway. That meant he wasn't home, and neither was my mom. I parked anyway, right in the driveway where my dad's car should have been, and stepped out, heart pounding. The porch light was off, but the house wasn't dark. The upstairs light was on. My parents' bedroom. As I stood frozen in the entryway, I heard it. A faint shuffling noise coming from upstairs. Slow, uneven, deliberate. "Mom? Dad?" I called out. The second my voice echoed up the stairs, the noises stopped. And then, bang! The door to their bedroom slammed shut. That was the moment I knew something was wrong, very wrong. I checked again. The driveway was still empty. My dad wasn't home. Neither was my mom. And whoever was upstairs, it sure as hell wasn't them. I panicked. And, like an idiot, I did the most reckless thing I could have done. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a carving knife, and charged upstairs. My footsteps thundered up the steps as adrenaline surged through me. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think. I slammed the bedroom door open, nearly breaking it off the hinges. The room was empty. At least it looked that way. But then I noticed something. The jewelry case on my mom's dresser was wide open, drawers pulled out, contents scattered. Whoever had been here was looking for something, or taking it. My hands were trembling as I picked up the corded phone from the nightstand. I started dialing 911, my fingers fumbling over the buttons. But before I could even speak, something grabbed me. From under the bed, a hand shot out, gripping my ankle like a vice. Cold fingers, too strong. I screamed and instinctively slashed down with the knife, stabbing blindly. There was a sickening, wet sound, followed by a roar of pain. The man under the bed howled in agony. I tried to pull away, nearly falling over as I yanked the corded phone with me. But it was no use. I couldn't take it far. It was tethered to the wall. All I had time to tell the 911 operator was, "Someone broke into my house." I choked out my address, voice cracking. Behind me, I heard him crawling. The man pulled himself out from under the bed, the knife still jammed into his arm. But he didn't look at me. He didn't say a word. He just ran. Straight down the stairs, straight out the front door. I heard the front door slam again, followed by the squeal of tires as he tore out of the driveway. All I saw was a blur of motion, but I caught just enough to give the cops something. He was a black man, wearing ragged clothes and a backwards hat. He drove a black Honda Accord. That was it. That was all I could give them. And I couldn't even explain the rest. I couldn't bring up the website. I couldn't tell the police I found him through an illegal drug marketplace on the dark web. That would have only made things worse. So I kept it to myself. All I could do was describe the man, his clothes, his car. But he's still out there, free. And the worst part? I can only guess how he found me, how he got into my house. The dark web, the messages, the questions, the better meeting spot. He must have hacked me, somehow. And even now, I sometimes wonder if he's still watching.